Oh my God, finally, Tony, I can't tell you how excited I am to see you finally back and actually us back.
I have returned.
Oh my God, he had returned. How are you? Please tell me everything. How is
Oh,
life?
so I don't know if any of the listeners know, but I live in the United States and I live in North Carolina, and I happen to live in the region that Hurricane Helene hit. Um, it was pretty
Oh,
devastating. I lucked out a lot better than the surrounding area, but it was still devastating to experience, to feel helplessness,
hmm.
to feel no one was coming to help, and to just try, helping neighbors and empathize with the people, around me that lost loved ones or missing persons and homes just demolished and gone. And
Oh my God.
some people that own property, you would think, well, if my house goes, I at least have the land. So at least you could rebuild, or you could maybe sell the land and move somewhere else. But the way that hurricane hit so badly, your land is not even there. You don't even know
Whoa.
where your land used to be. Like,
Really?
you could be like, oh, my house is not here, my shed is not here. This looks like a totally different area, but technically this is where everything was. Or it's underwater. So like how can you sell land that's underwater? It's the river, the river took such a basically they have to make new maps because the area is totally not even the same geography anymore. There's
Oh,
hills,
you.
used to be hills. There's just river where there used to be land. So those people, unfortunately, they don't even have any land to sell because there is no land.
Oh
It's
my God. And you think it's gonna remain like that, or the water gonna pull back?
where the river rerouted. Yeah, the river literally rerouted itself.
Oh my God.
It was pretty crazy, but and then politics
And
got involved and all kinds of things, and the counties that were involved are very it,
slow.
they're very non-trusting of the government. This is Appalachian Mountains. This is I live in the mountains with Appalachian people that have been there with their families for generations, and
Hmm.
never really ever trusted the government. So
Mm.
they were just into helping each other. The community was saving each other. And they didn't really like that the government came in and said you can't help people, or you can't bring in these supplies, or we're controlling.
What?
Yeah, I mean, I could see how maybe you know for safety reasons, but they were too slow to help. So there's a lot of people that passed that were waiting for help that never got any help, and so they passed.
Oh my God.
It
Like
was
it's a 24th century, like a 21st century. Why would be forbidden to help anyone? Oh my God. How are you like are those like communities live off the grid, or kind of like they are like all involved into a
No, I mean, at one point, I think they've been off the grid, but they have city water. They have
Mm.
electricity in the city. Some may be on well water, you
Mm.
know. But
Okay.
for the
And
yeah,
unfortunately, this life event can take your relationship with an animals and with your little pack to another dimension. Please, maybe that would be a very interesting thing to share. Like, how did you do that? Like, happily, nothing,
I was really
no
lucky.
one
There was
hurt,
no,
no one was hurt.
yeah, there was nothing to prepare you. My wife and I, when we were talking about the surrounding, people that were affected, we realized how bad things were, and we thought to ourselves, okay, if we were gonna, because we're not in the mountains, but we're in Polk County. We're in that region that where you start to get to the mountains.
Hmm.
And we're talking about, hey, if we had to, what would we do? How would we pack up the dogs? We have a horse trailer. How can we get them in the horse trailer? How do we separate them? So that they can be safe, unsupervised in that trailer as we're pulling it. which car are we going to pull it with? Where are we going to put our first aid supplies, our water supplies, our toiletries? And we were kind of come up with this plan, and we thought, okay, next time this happens, we're going to be prepared. But when we really saw the footage that people took with their video cameras, when it happened, we both realized you can't plan for what actually happened, because the people were told, hey, there's a flood warning. And when they get a flood warning, we're used to seeing a little bit of flooding. Just, the street irrigation is a little slow to drain. And so we get a little bit of flooding. But it should have been a mandatory evacuation is what it should have been. That should have been the alert, a mandatory evacuation, not a flood warning. So the people that were expecting it to flood a little bit saw a tidal wave of water and mud just crash right through their town and their cities. And the only thing you had time for was to try to run to higher ground. And if you couldn't run to higher ground, you had to hop on somebody's house or jump up on your house. There was this one event that I heard about from somebody else where they saw their neighbor older, you just can't jump like a monkey on your house. So he went and grabbed his ladder and put it on the house. And as he was climbing up the ladder to get to the top of the house, the water took the ladder and took him with it.
Oh my God.
So there is no preparing. There was nothing you can do. It was just crazy. But I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that
thanks God. Yeah, everything is well. I was kind of worried, as much as that's kind of used, word to use about you. And I'm glad that kind of. I don't want to lose such a great show, to be honest. Just because you get, taken over with a flood or something. No, God forbid. But it's kind of it would be great to talk about if you would need to move the dogs with the trailer and move away from somewhere and get yourself settled in some area that you cannot provide your dogs with everything that they kind of their everyday routine, and provide them with all of those whatever we were talking about, like exercises and moving them around the block and kind of
it would definitely take them out of their routine for sure. But I think preparedness is mainly for that kind of situation. If you could follow an evacuation order that was mandatory and not get caught in a situation that you wouldn't have time to do that. But I mean, it would be typical of just any evacuation plan. You should have at least 2 or 3 weeks worth of food for each animal, because you may not go for 2 to 3 weeks. But
that's completely okay. What I'm thinking about here is that exactly, because now I was telling Doberman and the Husky, and they do have these specific traits that they can be used for. But what if life happens and now we are not able to provide something that we got them used to? And unfortunately, in these kind of events, we can learn that actually keeping those traits, as you said, like I have this Breton and like a Brittany, and then they love to chase and they love to do this and they love to do that. I think that the life teaches us that if we want to live with the dogs, we need to prepare themselves and us for unpredictable times. That might be flooding or whatever unfortunately happened, these godly events.
I think the most prepared thing, I mean, if I were to give anybody advice as far as how would I prepare for something like this, is your dog has to be good in a crate, or your dog has to be good in temporary containment. But also too, I'm just happy to kind of be in a sense of normalcy. And it's also not a subject I really want to spend time on anymore, because it was pretty traumatizing. There's people that died, people caught in trees. I kind of wanted to talk about some other things other than preparedness of that disaster, because I still have some emotional trauma.
I'm sorry to hear that. I was thinking maybe not yet, but I think it would be very good to explore, because I think we should be prepared, and the responsibility of ones that can help us or help someone overcome the personal emotional involvement, because now we have responsibility. And you going through this will qualify you the most to talk about these things, what the people would do with their animals if they get them caught themselves in this kind of environment. And
Yeah,
I completely understand, but kind of like keep this in
there
mind.
is really nothing.
Once you get a little better, I guess, like, wouldn't take you too much. It doesn't look like a snowflake, I guess. Like, you
There's
can.
I
I do
mean,
understand. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, there's no way to prepare for this. You could have been prepared as much as you wanted to be. It was like a tidal wave that hit in the middle of somewhere that shouldn't have been there to begin with. Like it was just so quick, so fast. A lot of people lost animals that died and passed. It happened too fast, and there was just no way to prepare for it. To be honest, it was one of those national, disaster events that it just came with. Even if you were prepared, you didn't have time to move animals. You didn't have time to even grab your buggy bag. You didn't have time to grab your first aid equipment. You had to get to higher ground as quickly as possible. People were jumping on their kitchen counters because that's how fast the flooding happened through their house. Like, you had no time to even do anything. So there was nothing to really prepare for that, unfortunately. But I mean, I can understand if you had a mandatory evacuation, you should have things ready to go, and your dog should be already understanding of how to jump in the car, in emergency, or how to be in containment for several hours, and probably have to be that way and be taken out of containment off and on to do the potty breaks. But they'd have to be in containment for a while before you can get to an area that they could be more free. But that's probably where the Humane Association probably helps, and they have some program to keep the dogs in a temporary location until victims can get their lives back in order. But what I wanted to do, if it's okay with you, is I kind of wanted to treat, I know we haven't been doing the podcast for a couple of weeks, and I thought what I would do is treat the listeners to the first week of my puppy prepping program. So whenever clients first contact me, when they're going to get a puppy, I take them through a puppy prepping program. It's about a couple of months before we go on to raising the puppies, but it kind of helps prepare people that are planning on getting a puppy to make sure that they don't do anything that's going to be counterproductive to raising a puppy. And
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of times when people reach out to me, they've already done a lot of they've already done a lot of things to mess up the puppy's development. So by the time people call a dog trainer for their puppy, the puppy's already displaying things that are irritating them or causing a disharmony in their family. And really, it's stuff that they started to begin with. And so I always tell people, if you're going to get a puppy, it's always wise to get your trainer or your behaviorist before your puppy even comes home, to prevent a lot of those puppy issues that have to be, addressed after you've already established some behavioral issues. So if that's okay, I'll just kind of take people through that. And then if there are any listeners that have any questions, they can ask questions, and maybe we can address them on the next podcast. Is that cool?
Yeah. Take it.
So I think sometimes, so I think what I end up telling a lot of people that call me regarding their puppies is I like to tell them that most of their puppies, they already come board and trained. Like, the mother does so much work with the puppies. By the time you get the puppies, you have a clean slate. Unless they were taken from their mother early, you should have already a very well behaved puppy. It's what you do in response to getting your puppy that undoes a lot of what the mother has done. And the mother is not going to hand you a book, or the breeder is not going to hand you a book saying, this is what the mother taught the puppy. This is what time the puppy eats. This is how the puppy adapts to this. You just get a fresh puppy, right? So what I like to tell people is that when a puppy comes to you, the puppy already comes knowing how the universal laws of the world work. And some of the things that they know, or they should know, is the difference between natural boundaries and physical boundaries, or personal space, or territory. They come already understanding that premise. And we have to be sure that we don't undo what they've already learned from their mother, because then it causes behavioral issues in the future. So as far
How
as
many? I'm sorry. How many influence the breeder can have, and the way they interact with the mother and the puppies while under the supervision of the breeder? Because we have a lot of breeders that are, you have those people that has a puppy like out. It's not a breeder. They just have a puppy. They just have a dog and puppy, and the puppies are very cute, and the people always love to be in the puppy pen with the doggies and to put them on the to eat and then to do these all kind of things, because I see oftentimes the breeders overdo it.
yeah,
What do
yeah,
you think about that?
it's not about what kind of influence they can have. It's basically for the breeders to nurture what the mother is already doing and stop interfering, is really what the main thing is. So one of the important things that is important, like for example, let's talk about the differences between a natural boundary and a physical boundary. Because I think when I tell people a little bit more, they start to understand why it's so important to have the mother do a lot of the work that she's supposed to be doing. But if you're walking down a sidewalk, right? If you're walking down a sidewalk and you stumble in the street,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get hit by a car. There's no signs telling you, don't go in the street. There's no railings there. So walking on a sidewalk requires some mental maturity, some mental cognition, and some self-awareness of what's around you, so you don't walk off the sidewalk and get hit by a car. That's what we call a natural boundary. Another natural example of a natural boundary is a traffic light. If you're at a traffic light and it's red, there's not somebody in front of you going, don't move, you have to wait for it to turn green, you can't move. There's nobody there directing you. That requires mental maturity, impulse control, self-restraint, self-awareness. And even if that light turns green, you should look both ways before you decide just to go, right?
And you think that's natural? That shouldn't be taught? You don't think so that the parents are teaching that their kids?
You're misunderstanding. It's called a natural boundary. The mother teaches it.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be nurtured, but that's what it's called, a natural boundary. A physical boundary would be something more like if you're at a railroad crossing and the lights ding 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 ding, they start going down.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a physical boundary. So then there's the longest train in the world, and you're wondering, oh my gosh, how long is this train going to be? That's an experience that's important to have, because that's also where your impulse control, your self-restraint, your self-soothing skills, your emotional regulation comes in. And as you can see, some people can't handle it. Some people get out of that line and flip around and go a different direction. They won't wait for the train to finish. So that's kind of how a physical boundary affects the psyche. So a lot of the times those lessons, for example, the way they're taught by their mother is with, let's just talk about wildlife, for example, with coyotes or with wolves, they have what we call a den. That den doesn't have a door on it, right? So they can walk in and out of that den if they wanted to. That would be a natural boundary. There's no physical barrier there. But the mother can go on looking for resources. She can leave for an hour, come back and regurgitate food. And those puppies will never leave the den. So she's taught them from a very early age, even though this is an open den, you can't just leave the den unless I'm here. So they learn this. That's equivalent to like somebody going to work, 8-hour shift, coming back from work, realizing that they didn't close their front door properly and it's been open probably the whole time they've been at work. And they may think there's no way my dog is still in the house. He's had to have left by now. But if they go in, the dog's still chilling on the couch, was just waiting for them to get back from work, even though that front door had been left open. So puppies at a very early age can actually do that. They're taught to do that at a very early age, but humans tend to undo that. So what happens is once the puppies understand that natural boundary, then the mother starts to teach what we call territory. And so she allows them to leave the den, but they can't be more than 30 seconds away from that den. Because if something were to happen, if there to be some sort of danger, they need to be close enough to the den. They need to be able to get to the den within 30 seconds to avoid that danger. Technically, if they were running to that den, they could probably cut that 30 seconds down to 15 seconds. So they're always kind of in a situation of safety. It's almost equivalent to if parents are moving to a new neighborhood and their children say, I want to go out and meet new friends, their parent might say, okay, do me a favor, when you go out and play with the kids in the neighborhood, don't leave the block. You can only stay on the block. Until the parents get comfortable with the surroundings and who their neighbors are, and then the children can have a better cognitive map of their neighborhood as well before they start extending that boundary.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the important things is a lot of times people, when I ask people, do you think pack structure is nurtured, or do you think it's nature? Do you think it's instinctual? And a lot of people surprisingly think that it's instinctual, that pack structure just happens on instinct, which is not true. That pack structure is actually nurtured. It's not necessarily instinctual, it's nurtured, but it does have an innate component to it in order to allow that nurturing. So when the mother is whelping her puppies, she's the source of food. So when she moves, the puppies tend to always congregate under her because she's the source of the food. So they're under her, constantly milking. And of course, while they're under her with that innate behavior to suckle, they do have to kind of learn to have some sort of cooperation with one another because they're all crowding under her. And that's where they tend to learn their subordinate and dominant body postures, their bite inhibition, those kind of things. So that kind of creates that following pack structure and that communication. But there's also what we call that personal space. So remember, we talked about natural boundaries, physical boundaries. We got territory covered with being near the den, but there's also that personal space. And this is where I find a lot of breeders tend to undo this or mess this up, which makes it very difficult for people that acquire one of their puppies. But when they start to teeth, that starts to hurt. That hurts the mom. It hurts the boobies. Mm-hmm. So she needs a break. So she tends to want to ask for personal space when she needs the break. And sometimes she has to be rather stern about it. Or rather disciplinary about it to make sure that they know, hey, I really don't want you guys near me. So she learns to establish that personal space. And those puppies then have to learn, hey, I just can't walk into my mother's space. I need to be more self-aware, read the room, look at her, and see if she's even inviting me into her personal space, or whether I can tell, I think she needs some time alone, right? And they tend to learn that as well. So what happens a lot of the times is when those puppies finally get home to their new owners tend to undo all of those lessons. For one, they don't continue the puppy's understanding of a natural boundary. So for example, rather than just teaching the puppy, hey, I need you to stay out of the kitchen, which the puppy would be able to understand because their mother has already taught them that, they right away put up a baby gate. So they put up that baby gate, which is a physical boundary. The puppy then never exercises or continues the exercise of their natural boundary. And now you're creating a frustrating situation for the puppy because you're not allowing the puppy to respect the boundary on their own. It's like the railroad tracks where the arms are crossing and the reds are blinking. It just causes frustration. Or they allow the puppies to invade their space all the time, constantly letting the puppy jump and kiss me, and jumping on the neighbors and jumping on the friends and jumping on the neighbor's dog. And the puppy learns that there's no more any personal boundaries. They don't have to read those situations properly. So what I do with my beginning of my puppy program is I try to help the clients maintain kind of a routine until I can work with them on the following week to start continuing the support of those things that the mother already nurtured with them. So I kind of wanted to take the listeners through what I generally have my first clients do for their first week before I work with them the following week, just to prepare them for the things that they're going to be doing, and also making sure they don't undo a lot of things that'll make the program a bit more difficult. So one of the things is that crate. So what I will generally tell clients is that when you work with me, the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to get the largest crate possible for your living space. And a lot of the times my clients will say stuff like, well, I have a Chihuahua, so does that mean I can use a Great Dane sized crate for my Chihuahua? The answer is that would be awesome. That would be perfect. We're not looking for a crate for containment, and we're not going to be using it for containment. So a lot of times when people get their puppy, the first thing they do is put their puppy in a crate and close it, or they start to do what they call crate training, which just puts an overemphasis on the crate, and it doesn't actually even need to be taught. The puppies will know how to use that crate on their own naturally. But it is important to give them their own personal space, right? And to teach them the difference between their space and your space. So the only thing though is sometimes clients will say, well, my living space, I can't put a Great Dane sized crate in my living space. And so I always have to remind them what I said was get the largest crate possible for your living space. If that's a medium crate for your Chihuahua, that's fine. But ultimately, I don't want clients going to PetSmart or Petco and listening to the sales rep tell them that they need to be in a fitted crate. Enough for them to stand up, turn around, get comfortable, and then they don't have any other option but to lay down. That is really, really bad. And it's a bad experience to put a puppy through. We want freedom. We want more room. We want it to be a room. And then and that crate should never be shut. So I always tell my clients, we're not closing that crate, because the first thing or the misunderstanding that they typically have is, all right, so we're going to crate train this puppy to be in the crate. That's not even what we're working on. You're stuck in dog training mode, or you've been working with past trainers and you think just because I told you to get a crate, that's what we're going to be working on. We don't have to train that. It's going to happen on its own natural. Now, where you put that crate is going to be very important. So I always tell clients that when you first get that crate, it needs to be on the half of the house that's furthest away from the front door. At right now, the only reason why I tell people in the very beginning to put that crate on the half of the house that's furthest away from the front door is because what we'll be doing in the future. What we'll be doing in the future is we will be creating a natural boundary around what we call emotional hotspots, which means that the front door, or the most used door, would be an emotional hotspot, because that's the door you walk in when you say, I'm home. That's the door you leave when you say, I'm going to work, bye. It's the door that FedEx knocks and takes off. It's the door that the puppy can hear people walking their dog back and forth with the chain of their collars. It leads out to the real world, so it becomes an emotional hotspot. And later on, we teach the puppy that whenever someone knocks the door, whether it be Pizza Hut or delivery guy, when you cross that half house boundary to go answer the door, the puppy should be able to stop and not finish, and be able to give you the space to open the door and greet whoever you want to greet without them invading the space or seeing who it is. That happens later on in the program, which is the whole reason why I always start people with, it's good just to be ahead of the game and just say, hey, wherever you put this crate, put it on the half of the house that's furthest from the front door. So that way, by the time I work on that, it'll happen a little bit more smoothly. Now, once they have that crate on that half of the house, it's very important that they understand where the dog's going to be feeding and where the dog's going to be watered. And so I always tell people that crate is their feeding station. It's their area. I don't generally allow clients to put a food bowl or a water bowl in the kitchen or in the living room, which is typical of what they do, because that then becomes community space. And we really need the puppy at an early age, especially when they're first entering the environment, to understand that it's not community space. That's the family, the parent space, right? Just like children have their own room. So, if children are leaving toys and everything in the living room, first thing you do is say, hey, pick up after yourself and go take that to your room. Otherwise, they'll become my toys too, right? So I always tell people to get 2 snap fit bowls. Because if you put a water bowl and a food bowl in a crate, they're going to eventually step on it, make a mess, spill water over. It gets annoying, puts the owner in crisis, which is the whole reason why they put the food and water bowl somewhere more open so it doesn't get stepped on. So those 2 snap fit bowls are the kind that you might see maybe in a groomer's or in a rescue situation, where they take the bowl and the water bowl and they snap it onto the side of the crate so it's elevated and it can't be pulled off or messed around with, so they drink out of that water in that food bowl. So where you place those bowls in that crate are going to be important. And so I always have people take the water bowl and put it on the inside of the crate wall as close to the front of the gate as possible, right? So it's on the side wall. That's where the water is going to be indefinitely. And the puppy will know how to drink water there naturally. They'll just grab water from there. The food bowl is going to be snapped onto the actual door of the crate for future stuff. Right? We're not even going to have to actually put the food bowl in there, but in the future, we want it so when you open the crate, the bowl swings out, and if you put food in, it can swing in. But for now, we just want the hardware there so we can use it in the future. But the food bowl actually won't be visible. So what I always tell clients is, once you get the water bowl there, the food bowl, that needs to be put away. We never want to leave an empty food bowl out. We don't want it to become something that they obsess over because of the association. We always want to put it, in a cabinet or put it away. We will bring it out when we're ready to feed, but that happens in a certain way and in a certain order. So for those that are listening, food bowl needs to be put away at all times until we're ready to feed. And we're going to get to that point, hopefully today in this podcast, how we feed them. The leash equipment, that's also super important. So remember in the very beginning too, when we first spoke, I always told you that latent learning has nothing to do with teaching. And latent learning has nothing to do with how to do it either. It more or less has to do with how not to do something that's going to pull them away from their naturalness, not how to do something. Stop doing what you're doing that's causing the problem to begin with is usually kind of preemptive. So I always try to get with my puppy clients really early so I can be preemptive and prevent them from creating behavioral issues that we'll have to address. So with leash equipment especially, I always ask my clients, so where are you currently keeping your leash equipment, or where are you planning on keeping it? And the things that I don't want to hear is, oh, we have it in a drawer, we have it in a closet, or I have it in a coat pocket. Because what eventually happens is whenever you take it out of the closet, out of the drawer, out of the coat pocket, it creates an emotional response, right? Puppy gets excited. Oh my God, I'm going for a walk, right? It's something that the owners create as they're raising this puppy. So what I always tell clients is to get some sort of, sometimes they sell them at Bed Bath & Beyond or like a door rack or a towel rack. Some people can hang them on the door of their bathrooms and get their towels on. Or maybe a wall plaque where you can hang keys. I always ask people to get those and keep your leash equipment so it's always visible, especially in the line side of their crate, because then it loses its novelty. It's part of their environment and it has other representations. It just doesn't mean, oh, we're going for a walk. So I always tell people they want to have that equipment out. They don't want it to become an emotional bookmark in the future that gets them intense. Mm-hmm. So now let's talk about the walk, because this part is kind of important. So whenever we feed the puppies, whenever I'm working with my clients on feeding, one of the things that I always tell them is never feed your puppy before a walk. You should always be feeding the puppy after the walk. And there's certain reasons for that I go in further, but to try to compartmentalize it or make it condense for this podcast is oftentimes when my clients are walking their dogs, I usually ask my clients, when you're walking your dog, what is the purpose of the walk to you? Why are you walking them? Why do you feel it's super important to walk with your dog every day for 30 or 45 minutes? And the most common answer I usually get from that is for exercise. My dog needs the exercise. They need that stimulation. Mm-hmm. And I have to explain to people that that's a very human way of thinking. If you were really thinking that that's what you're doing is giving your dog exercise, you have to understand that your dog is way more athletic than you are. That 45-minute walk you're doing is hardly exercise, especially if it's on a leash where they can't really run and express themselves and run through things. That might be exercise to you mentally, but it's really not doing anything for your dog. So we have to ascertain what is the dog's perception of that walk. What does the dog think you're causing that walk for? And so what I'll tell people is dogs really migrate for two primary reasons. They're either migrating for resources, food, water, where those are at, or they're migrating for territorial mapping, getting to know their area, marking trees, marking territory. So then I generally ask a client, if you're walking your dog, how many times does your dog pee on that walk? Like, what would you say? 3-5 times on the walk? And the most common answer I will usually get, I'm hoping that they tell me the dog only pees once. maybe twice. But I very rarely get that answer. So the common answer I usually get is, oh, at least 8, 10 times. And so then I say, okay, so right there, that tells me that your dog's perception of the walk is territorial mapping. Okay. We need to switch that perception that they're walking with you. It has nothing to do with territorial mapping. It has to do with following you to a resource, right? Going through a ritual and following you to a resource. So we need to create that. And the way we create that to change the dog's perception is before you walk the dog. Remember how I said to get that empty food bowl and put it somewhere, right? So what you do is you take the empty food bowl about 10 to 15 minutes before you walk your dog, and you put it on top of the crate about 10 to 15 minutes before you even go for a walk. Because what will happen over time is when you do that, every time you put an empty bowl on top of the crate, the first thing the dog thinks is, one, we're about to go for a walk. So it gives them that pattern recognition. Two, I'm going to eat after that walk. So now they have something to look forward to. It changes their perception of what the walk is even for. So once you go for your walk, when you come back, you'll do the feeding. And then I'm going to get into details of how you do that feeding because there's a little ritual to do that as well. But when you do the walk, it's super important that I always tell my clients this is pick a spot. Don't even start your walk until your dog has eliminated themselves first. So pick a spot, let your dog go pee, let your dog go poop, however long that takes, then go for your walk. And when you do your walk, for one, and remember, we're talking about a puppy, I never take them out more than 30 seconds away from their home territory. So at first, just like the mother, I just get them to stay on the block. So it's like with the kids, stay on the block to get to know your neighborhood. I don't really venture more than 30 seconds away from their home territory because over time, they'll create a cognitive map of their neighborhood. They'll know how to get home if they ever get lost, just like with children. I think a lot of the times people make their dogs more reactive during a walk, and the dogs never really focus on their cognitive map of their area. So when dogs do get loose, they never ever come back home because they just get disembogulated by all the excitement, and then they realize they can't get back home. So I really want them to understand their area. The other thing also I tell people is don't stop moving. So when you're walking with your puppy, you always stay in motion, never stop moving. And that puppies will naturally instinctually follow you. When you stop walking, you prevent that, and then they start to go into territorial mapping. So these are sniffing around and stuff like that. And remember, the mother always stays in motion, which creates this natural bonding, right? And so you are kind of that new parent. So as you move, you'll notice the puppies will just start following. You don't have to teach puppies to be off leash. They'll generally follow you. If they're not, you've already done something to screw it up, which then we'd have to go into that. But for the most part, staying within 30 seconds of your home territory and stay in motion. So if your neighbor says, oh my God, you got a new puppy? Yes, but you keep walking. You don't stop to talk to your neighbor at all. Just keep moving. The miscommunication sometimes with some of my clients is they think, well, my puppy needs way more than a 30-second walk. And so I have to explain to them, I never said to take the puppy for a 30-second walk. You can walk for an hour if you wanted to. I'm saying just don't be more than 30 seconds away from the house, right? Now, when you get home, this is where the food bowl comes into consideration. When you get home and you bring your puppy home.
Wait, can I jump in? Can we discuss a little bit?
Yeah.
Or you want me just to leave you talking? Because I have a wonderful question here. Because we talked a lot about you use the word puppy all the time, and I completely I listened to you, and then I said how we can have two different perceptions of the same topic. As of so far, you are talking everything that I completely agree with, because you didn't say husky, you didn't say poodle, you didn't say doodle, you didn't say nothing, you said puppy. And you are using pretty straightforward language in explaining what a walk actually means to a dog. Mm-hmm. And then tell me when that and how that actually happens, that from this perception of you understanding that walk for the dog is actually looking for the resources or territorial mapping, turn into need of husky to exercise.
Why? I don't understand why the change of the subject.
No, it's not as changing the subject, because often people would say, I need to take my dog in a walk because they are like, it's a husky, need exercise. And when we discussed that, and when I said the dog doesn't need exercise regardless what the breed are, the dogs what they need, because every single time any dog goes out, the dogs are prey animals and they are looking for every single time to see for the prey and or actually to the better sources of the food or to protect the territory regardless of their breed. And then we went in that discussion about does the husky.
To me, it doesn't matter what breed of dog you have, because
I get that.
Yeah. So to me, there is no regard. It doesn't matter what breed they have. The fundamentals of their natural innate behavior, you have to nurture. You have to meet their species appropriate needs. And people tend not to do that. So it doesn't matter to me what breed they have.
So actually, they don't need to walk husky for 2 hours.
I feel that they do, but it doesn't care about the breed. I think they should be going hiking with their animals. I think they should be going more exploration and go to more of an area where they can allow more freedom to run and to sprint and to walk and to rest when they need. They need more of that exploration, and that has maybe an English bulldog wouldn't be able to do that for very long. And that's probably where things can get more breed specific, but it is a requirement of every dog, regardless of what its capabilities are based on their breed.
Yeah, that's kind of like very, very nice point, because that's what I advocate around. And I said, like, you should think about yourself first and allow yourself, because it doesn't mean that you have a husky inside the home of the New York apartment, and now you happen to have a nice spring weather that you can take your husky for a 2-hour walk. Because if you settle your walk around what you just said, the walk can be 1 hour, can be 30 seconds, can be 1 minute, can be 10 minutes. It's not a breed specific thing. And the people should not think about that. They should take their husky and Doberman for a countless walk. And then because now they have a shifting the job position and they happen to work like 10 hours instead of 8 hours or 4 hours, that they don't have time as they anticipate they need for the Doberman or the husky to keep those dogs to the shelters. Because they think that actually the dogs are going to do something, that by going to the walk, the dogs are actually exercising some trait or some characteristic that is breed specific and inherited, where actually every single time any dogs go to the walk is actually going to look for the other source of the food or to mark the territory.
Yeah. And the thing is, when I'm working with my clients, I don't necessarily encourage my clients to leave their dogs at home. Their dogs need to be an active part of their lifestyle. So I tend to have less calls from people that live in more, urban areas. I don't get very many calls from people that live. A lot of people that live in urban areas don't have as many behavioral issues that people that live in suburban areas, because their dogs are lifestyle. They go do things with their dog. They go to the river with their dog, or they own a lot of land. And as they're walking and maintaining stuff on their land, their dog is with them. Or even people that still own homes and small plots of land, they still have resources around them of exploration or places they can take their dog. And I think when people are in suburban areas, the dogs unfortunately get a bad experience and start to develop behavioral issues because for whatever reason, you feel like you don't need to take your dog everywhere with you. Or for me, if I need to go fill up my gas tank and just go buy a quick gallon of milk, I bring my dog with me. I never leave my dogs at home because I'm just running a quick errand. They're always kind of a part of what I do. But what I was going to say is when they come home, right, there has to be a completion of their mental exploration with you. There has to be a reason for it for them. And so what I tell people is if you don't feed your dog after the walk, what tends to happen is they kind of end on a cliffhanger. Like, what did we just do? Why did we do it for? So let me give you an example. If you're watching a Netflix special, like your favorite show, and your character just falls off a cliff and they're like, ah, and you see to be continued, you're all of a sudden like, dang it. Did they live? Did they survive? They can't kill off that character. It's a main character.
You just hit the next episode.
Yeah. And then what? When you tune into, but there is no next episode. So when you turn in to watch the next episode next week,
Oh,
find that your show's not on. And then when you look further into it, you realize, that was the season finale. You're not going to know what happens to your character until next summer when the new season comes out. So now you're left like, anxiety, anticipation, right? And so I always tell people that when you walk your dog and there's no completion to that walk, it's the same thing. They don't know what the point of the walk was. They don't know what the purpose of it was. So there can only be one other purpose. It's for territorial mapping. So then they're going to start marking a lot more. So we want to always complete, ending it by, I just took you to a resource. So when your dog comes home, I always tell clients that you should get your food bowl that was sitting on top of the crate 15 minutes prior to the walk. It should already be in their crate, full of food, pushed to the far end of the crate as possible. And when you lead your dog up to the crate, you just take off the leash and then let them go into the crate and eat their food. I never say anything.
So who was feeling the food? How did you feel the food?
But there's the thing. So here's the thing. For my clients on that first week of homework I give them, we don't want the puppy knowing who did that. So we don't want the puppy knowing how the food got to the back of the crate and who filled the food. We just want the puppy coming home realizing, hey, my bowl is full of food in the back. So I don't want the client involved with that first week of the homework I give them with the food, because I don't want the owner associated with the food at that point.
How do you solve the problem for the single living person with the dog?
They have to be smart. I don't work with stupid clients. So you have to be smart enough to know how to put your dog in a separate room or put your dog outside in the yard, come back in and set it up on your own. Or if you have a partner, you can always say, hey, can you make sure the food's in there before I get back? But you have to do that. You have to figure out how to do that. So when your dog comes home, that's already done for you. Or you've already pre-planned it and you did it ahead of time. But for that first week, and it's only for the first week, I don't generally later on in the second week, I tell the clients how they can feed their dog, being involved with the food, but there's a certain step that they have to take, where the dog has to wait for their food to be given to them. But it's done in a certain way, which is usually something I move on to next week. But for the first week, I don't want the food associated with the owner at all, because I really want to focus on their natural bond with their new owner. And I want them to build that on a walk and some other exercise that I do as well in the house. But the food, it will ruin the bond between them and the owner right away, especially if the breeder or any person's been manipulating with food. So I try to keep the food out of the equation. Food is just food. It's just to eat. I don't want it to create an association, but the owner is involved with it in any way. So this
I can't wait to share my method of doing it, because it's completely the opposite.
Yeah,
it's completely. And now in consideration of this, what you just said, I consider myself stupid, because I was just, while you're talking all of this, I start to puzzle. If I don't have a partner, I would need to help someone come and help me, because if I wouldn't be a wrong message if I bring the dog home and put him in a different room and do that myself and then leave the dog out from the room?
To do that, because the dog would still be able to put the two pieces together. They're smart. They're going to know that you put them in a room and that you're able to do that. You want to do it after the walk. So I generally tell people, if you're going to go outside, you can either put your dog in the car really quick, or you can put your dog in the garage real quick. You can race back in and set that up and still go for the walk and come back, and it'll already be done. And once again, it's only done for the first week. It's not how you're going to be doing it forever. The hard part The hard part, I think, for some people is to just let the dog do what it needs to do and no longer be actively trying to hover or control or manage. So I always tell my clients that once the dog goes in there, eats, you should just leave, sit on your couch, do your thing, go about your business. But so many people have to sit there and see if their dog is eating, or their dog for a little bit steps back out, and then they say, "Don't you want to go back and eat?" And they just start creating all of these potential issues. So I always tell people, you bring your dog home, the crate's open, lead him to the crate, take him off the leash, the dog will go in, their food's in there, they're going to eat it. And you just need to leave the situation from that point, right? Um, One of the things that I
When
also,
do you remove the bowl? Is there a specific time, or you just wait for them to move away, or
whenever they're done eating, you can just remove the bowl, wash it, and then put it back away, and then you'll have it set up for the next time.
and if they didn't eat everything?
You can still just take it away. Or actually, I always tell people that they can just leave it. They can leave it for a couple hours if they wanted to let the puppy go back to it, eat it as they please. But once the bowl's empty, you should take it away. You shouldn't just leave it in there. So, and then the other thing that I generally will have them work on too is try to maintain the puppy's understanding of personal space. The puppy doesn't need to be in your personal space all the time. But I generally tell people that you should be working on your off-leash recall in your house. So what I generally tell people is, for the most part, if my puppy is just invading my space, I generally always just tell them to get back, or just ask for your space. The puppy shouldn't be just jumping in into your space whenever they want to. But I always tell people that if you want to love your dog 80 times today, or if it's customary for you to always have your dog with you on your feed or on the couch or wherever they want to be with you, that you should start working that with your off-leash recall. So I tend to like to use the word or the phrase, come over here. So whatever the puppy's name is, Spot, come over here. And so that puppy starts to look forward to spending that quality time with you, especially when you start inviting them into your space. You don't need to use food. You don't need to use a training collar. You just need to use the puppy's innate understanding of wanting to have inclusiveness. And so anytime you call your puppy over, they're always naturally going to want to run up and be with you. But if you don't work on your personal space as well, then it starts to create a blurred understanding of personal space and boundaries. And then they start to invade other dogs' personal spaces. Or they tend to, as they get older, have this puppy-like mentality where they're not paying attention of reading people or reading another dog's situation, and they just invade space because they're just so used to doing it. So
And
that's
what if the dog doesn't respond to the recall? Because a lot of clients would come, oh, my dog doesn't want to come to me when
so
I call here.
the recall, then that's fine. The thing is I always tell them, if you call your puppy to come over here and they don't come, you can say the second time, come over here. If they don't come, you should stop. Don't do anything about it, because they're still trying to figure their situation out, and they're still trying to figure out the relationship with you out. But there's a genetic component in every canine. It doesn't matter what breed they are, of inclusiveness, of being a part of a family. That genetic component, that behavior is much more stronger than their prey drive. That inclusiveness of being in a pack-oriented family is much stronger than territory, or even food drive. They need that inclusiveness. So what happens is, if you're working on your personal space, over time, they want to be in your space. So they'll start to look forward to come over here, but it's going to take maybe that first week or that second week to start seeing that behavior become nurtured. Pretty soon, they look forward to you saying, come over here, and they just come 100% of the time, because it's their only opportunity to spend time with you. It's almost just like if your dad was coming home from work, he needs his personal space. But then later on, if your dad says, hey, you want to go for a truck ride real quick? Yeah. You're down for it. You're down to do whatever your dad wants to take you to. And so you have that to look forward to, and that creates a bond, and it also raises the client's value. So I usually have my clients start off with that first week. And then later on, as the week progresses, I start to change the order of how they're doing things. And we start to build off of that. But I just kind of wanted to share with listeners kind of the first steps that I usually take my clients through when they first bring home a puppy.
Do you
And
have
then
any specific protocols for the first day, like how that first day looks like or something? Because usually, I kind of like have, and we can, I can talk, I can pick up some other time to share my experience on that. But for what? Yeah, but for example, like in my work, like first 72 hours are completely different than anything else. Do you have any like specific thing of how the dog gets into the home on the first night and what they do at the first night if the puppy screams and what to come close to them and then they
yeah,
they don't know
usually,
what to do?
when I have clients, sometimes what I'll do is I'll have them either every person kind of has what their ideal situation is of how they want to continue living with their dog. But I generally will always encourage the client to maybe have their crate maybe first set up next to their bed or in their room because the pack sleeps together. I think that if you put your dog in a separate room or a separate area, especially when it's their first experience with you, that is a huge statement that kind of is almost like a slap in the face. You just pulled me from a place that I feel comfortable with the routine from my litter mates and from my mother, which I felt safe and secure in. Now you're putting me in a new environment that I'm not allowed to be in your pack. I'm not allowed to sleep with you guys. I'm not allowed to be where you sleep. You put me in this isolated bathroom or this isolated section separate from you, which is a clear statement that not only are you not part of the pack, but you're on your own. And you get a lot of this anxiety buildup. I actually sleep with my puppies. I know a lot of people, or sometimes when I talk to owners, they're like, oh, I don't want to sleep with my puppy. What if he pees in the bed? Those kind of things. But I feel that that bond, especially the first day of the puppy being with you in your home, sleeping in your bed, totally solidifies that bond. That experience of being in a new environment, they don't know that you just bought them. They don't know that they were purchased. They don't know that they were rescued. All they really know is that their situation has changed from since yesterday. And
Yeah,
so,
what we actually we are kind of giving like money or justifying whatever that, but in a sense, it's called kidnapping. We
yeah,
kidnap them from the
and
from the
we're den
environment
robbing.
in which they
Den
live,
robbing.
right?
We've been den robbing puppies for generations.
Yeah.
Let's call it purchasing now, or rescuing now. But it's still taking a puppy or a dog, for that matter, out of a current situation that they've just developed some normalcy, and then replanting them somewhere else. But I would say I would just sleep with my puppy.
Mhm.
Puppies generally will sleep through the night without defecating on you, especially when they're feeling a sense of safety, comfortability. If they start to get up and move around and look a little distressed, well, then get them off the bed. They're probably going to go to the bathroom, right? So they'll give you those signals. You'll see that they're restless. You'll see that they don't want to be with you. You'll see that they're looking at the edge of the bed, and that's your indication to go, okay, I think this puppy has to go to the bathroom. And then meeting those needs for them also helps them feel a sense of that they're being taken care of. But I think sleeping with your puppy is one of the biggest, strongest bonds that you can do. So for me, I think in the first 72 hours, that's exactly what we should be doing. One of the things that I do tell people, which I think throws a lot of people off, is if you have an existing dog already living in the house, I generally would tell people don't introduce your puppy to your existing dog until I tell you that it's time. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even let your puppy know that there's even another dog living there. Because what will often happen with puppies is they're so used to being with their litter and they're so used to being with their mother that when you take them into the situation and you don't know what they're thinking, it could be an emotional, traumatic situation for them. Or even if they're really confident, you still don't know what they're cognitively thinking. But as soon as they see there's another existing dog in the house, they will imprint themselves or attach themselves to that dog right away. Right away. And then you end up leaving the puppy with the dog most of the time, or you leave them in the yard on their own most of the time. And you're totally ruining your opportunity of that bond with yourself because now you're giving it to your other dog's responsibility. And that's where people tend to have these weird anomalies where my puppy doesn't listen to me, but he follows Ruger around. If I call Ruger, the puppy will follow Ruger. It's because that's who you allow the puppy to attach to. You really want to solidify your bond right away with the puppy before you allow the puppy to solidify a bond with a dog that's already existing in the home. You mentioned earlier about what breeders can actually do to help. One of the most common issues I get is that puppies don't understand personal space. They're not self-aware enough to read somebody or read a dog and know I'm not being invited into their space, and they just invade space of another dog. Then they get corrected as puppies and it becomes a negative experience. Because one of the things that the breeders tend to do, and I found a lot of breeders do this, and maybe you might have the same experience, is that once they start teething and the mother needs a mental break, the breeders tend to see the mother a little bit in distress because she needs a break. And then they start noticing that the mother starts to defend her space and ask for space. And sometimes she has to be pretty assertive to get the puppy to realize, get out, get away from me, I'm sore, right? And that's the most important lesson that happens naturally, is learning to step back, read the room, and know whether you're invited in someone's personal space or not. But what breeders tend to do is they see the mother in discomfort and they right away want to intervene, and they separate the mother from the puppy to give the mother a break. Or they put the puppies in a separate room, or they put a baby gate and let their mother come through so she's separated from the puppies so she can have a rest. And then they wonder why the puppies are unruly when they go to the new homes, or why they have no sense of personal space, and don't understand that aspect. It's because the breeders do that all the time, where they really need to let the mother do their job.
That's also a very, once now that we are in that space and that environment, what are your thoughts on saving the puppies that the mother abandoned? That just, there is always, in some litters you have a puppy that just, because of no matter what reason, mom just doesn't want to, give them a space, doesn't want to milk them. How you say that? Doesn't want to, kako se kaže to? Vedrane. Can you hear me?
Are you talking to me or somebody else?
No, I'm trying to ask Vedran to translate, and he just looks like he doesn't hear me. How does it says when the mother kad treba da doji? Huh?
Abandons the dogs, you mean?
Kako se kaže kada mama treba da doji bebe? Nurse. Okay, there is a puppy in the litter that the mother doesn't want to have nothing with. She's just pushing the puppy away. She cares about five little babies, but she doesn't want to nourish one. And then usually the breeders would go there and save that puppy and force it on mom, and oftentimes be very kind of like literally forcing the mom to save the puppy. Either they're gonna milk it through the mom. They're gonna force mom to feed that dog too, or they're gonna artificially give a milk or give the life to that dog. Which kind of message that is, and which kind of now you said like the mother should be listened to, and if she asks for the space and she asks this, that it should be respected. The cause of nature has their own turn and their own language. How involved and how bad messages for the rest of the puppy if the mother is pushing a puppy away and she wants the puppy for no matter what reason to die, because whatever happens with the puppy, and maybe it's not a good whatever. And now the breeder comes there and saves the puppy. Is that moral to do? Is that good to do? Is that a message that sends to the rest of the litter, if the mommy doesn't want you, humans gonna save you? Will that destroy the rest of the litter, or what would you do in that sense?
I think that every situation is unique to itself, so I can't give a blanket statement, but I will give you my understanding or my view of how I feel about a situation like that. If I was presented with that situation, is the first thing is most mothers don't want to not nurture or care for their puppies. There's always a reason behind what they're doing. So I would be asking for video first off. So I wouldn't necessarily take a breeder's word for gold, especially if they don't know what they're looking at, or just to assume that they do know what they're talking about. I have to see video of what they're talking about. But what I will tell you, whether I see that video or not, is that oftentimes there's always a reason for it. The puppy there could be something wrong with the puppy. There could be something off with the puppy, that maybe nature has its course for that puppy. And so the mother is honoring what comes natural to her. And a human saving that puppy probably wouldn't know what that purpose was until that older puppy becomes a dog and realizes, wow, there's something seriously wrong with this dog. But I had a similar situation with that. And like I said, that's why it's not a blanket statement, but I'll tell you about the personal situation that I had with that. So I had one breeder say that the mother was refusing only one of the puppies.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other puppies were fine. She was milking the other fine, but there was just this one puppy that she just, for whatever reason, didn't like and didn't want the puppy suckling on her. And she kept ostracizing that puppy and getting quite aggressive with it. And when I saw the video, it was really clear to me why. Because when I saw the video of that particular puppy was super insistent on invading its mother's space and never really read her properly. Meaning that the other puppies, she would stand her ground and say she needed a rest, but she always had to be particularly hard on this particular puppy. The owner didn't know why she's been being particularly hard on this one puppy, but when I saw the videos, it was clear to me that this puppy was one of the ones from the litter that really was not understanding what personal space was about, was not reading the mother properly, kept invading her space. And she always had to naturally be harder with this particular puppy because he wasn't understanding the personal space thing when the others were. And so that particular person ended up removing that puppy, which I advised them not to do. I advised them just kind of let nature take its course. But she realized, okay, well, this puppy's not understanding, and so it's taking the brunt of the punishment from the mom because the other puppies are complying, but it's not. I'm going to have to remove the puppy and bottle feed it. That puppy later on, as it developed, had a really bad issue of jumping on people and invading their space. As a matter of fact, one of the situations was that it was jumping on a person and it took a bit of their ear off their face. It tore their ear.
What breed was it? Like how big the dog was?
It was a wolf dog.
Oh, wolf dog. Yeah.
Yeah, and it took a piece of their ear. But just in defense of that puppy, it was just a puppy. There was no malintent. It wasn't attacking the person. It was just super intense and excited, and just there was nothing you could do to get it off your space. So it would grab a piece of clothing, anything it could to be on you, is what that dog ended up doing. And it became a really bad issue, which we had to teach the personal space lesson, which was very difficult. It took me about maybe 6 months to get this dog to understand personal space. It was a very hard case that didn't have to happen if they just let the mother do the dude's job. If they just separate this one puppy that was being ostracized, it would have eventually understood, I need to drink, I need to get milk. If I just wait for her to invite me in, I can have all the milk I want. Mm. And never allowed the puppy to go through that experience. Could the puppy have died? Perhaps, right? Perhaps the puppy could have died because it was never understanding to give personal space. But it was a very important lesson that ended up hurting somebody in the long run because they intervened. So I don't know.
Because the breeders play a crucial role in that because yeah, you're right. Until the puppies are not opening their eyes and everything, they're completely dependent on a mom, and then mom gonna teach them a lessons, and then occasionally they're gonna start interacting among themselves to learn the hierarchy, the structure, and the way how they're gonna observe the world. And usually, but I find the breeders that are most responsible ones are the ones that are gonna almost not interfere in this natural course, whatever it takes. Unfortunately, my the story that I have to share on that, and it's always every single time someone asks me on that, I kind of always put up this story. Those were my clients from Australia. They had like an amazing litter of the Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, right? And the litter was born. The mom was like an amazing champion. So the idea was to build in this wonderful type of the dogs in. And they got puppies, and they were like 5 puppies in a litter, and mother was significantly pushing away 2 of them, like pushing them away, like even on first 2 3 days, like when you don't expect them. She just wanted them out, no matter how those 2 puppies out of those 5 came. She was always somehow moving her body so she would care for 3, and she would just push these 2 aside. And then the lady asked me what to do. I said, like, responsible breeding would always listen to this cause, because there must be something down the road. And but also it's kind of like a hard call as well. So try to, I didn't want to influence their kind of like decision, but I said, like, it's very important that you really first listen to the kind of like this heart of yours, like you live with them and everything. But the mom, as she explained me, and I saw once we FaceTime and everything, she was like literally protecting these 3 puppies from 2 of them. And she said that you don't have heart to look at this, so she bottle fed them and she raised them high. And that was like maybe 8 years ago. Both of those puppies developed to have syndrome selingomelia. It's, I don't know, it's kind of like specific for the Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, in which actually the skull doesn't grow as much as the brain does. So, and at one point, the pressure of this brain, how you call this little one that goes out from the skull? Yes. Yeah, so there the pressure gets so high, and the dogs are scratching and rolling in a pain, and the operation sometimes is just to remove a part of the skull, just to create a bit more place for the brain to kind of like expand as much as it possible. But usually the dogs are dying in much pain, and it's not alive, right? But and those dogs have, both of them, the other litter even tested, the litter mates other tested on the Selingomelia syndrome possibilities to carry were like completely negative. But these 2 guys ended up not only to be genetically predisposed to it, but also to develop it. And by saving these 2 puppies, not listening to the mother's call and their decision, actually, oftentimes, and also what happened as well, very interesting story, is what that all those 3 litter mates had the behavioral issues, because they kind of ended up, one puppy stayed with them, and 2 were like sold to the other people. Both of them, all 3 of them have separation anxiety issues, have them, because I think that's my just perception of that outcome. I think like once the mother separates, and then the people like a higher authority, like a source provider, like a food providers, come there and save the ones that are actually looks like mother doesn't want these guys, but the people want them like that, right? So maybe there is something that those guys have much more, much better than we do, right? Because otherwise that was a gateway, being like that, to this breeder's kind of attention. And unfortunately, both of those dogs later on got euthanized, because the operation, I think like one got like a part of the skull removed in order for that to, release the tension and things like that. But the dog didn't live by too long, like after the surgery, and the other one, the second one, got euthanized. But that was like interesting to see how, as much as you said that there was always a reason, and responsible breeding always mean do more by actually doing less. The mother gonna do
And
everything.
just so you know, I love that you just said that because it's not just with the breeding, it's also ownership. Do less. Like people get puppy toys and these
Oh
food
my
pups.
God. Yeah, I got that.
And I
Yeah.
always tell people doing less is doing way more because what you're doing is just going to create a lot of anomaly behaviors that you're going to need a doctor to help you fix in the future. The thing that you brought up about bottle feeding was really interesting because I think a lot of I know that maybe some people that are listening to this podcast may not know my background because one of the questions that somebody would obviously ask, which you asked as well, is, well, what happens if there's a litter and the mother passed? What happens if there was no mother? What if we found the litter and we don't know what happened to the mother? What are you going to do? And that's where, rescue workers will start bottle feeding. And bottle feeding, I guess you have to do what you have to do to rescue these puppies. But one of the cases that most of the cases with bottle fed puppies are usually typically the hardest to deal with. My wife, Alexa, put it in a very interesting way because she's an equine behaviorist. She does horses. And one of the things she told me was that's the same thing with horses. The horses, the herd teach the folds. And then she goes, and one of the worst behavioral issues I have with horses when I'm helping people with horses is, was this horse bottle fed? And then they go, oh yeah, that's bad. Because when you're bottle feeding a horse, it becomes a 1,200-pound animal that invades your space. And if anybody knows anything about horses, teaching horses to get out of your bubble is important. Otherwise, you get run over by a 1,200-pound animal. They step on you, a 1,200-pound animal. So she has to work a lot about personal space with horses and those type of owners that have horses like that. With me, whenever people call me or they say, what experience do you have helping puppies that have lost their mother? That's the whole reason for my program, actually, because I started working on these kind of things because my main primary focus when I was working with canine research was working with wolves and high content wolf dogs. And so when I was working with high content wolf dogs and I was getting into that study, I would meet a lot of wolf dog owners. And a lot of wolf dog owners, the reason why they would hire me is because they say, we heard you specialize in wolf dogs, or we heard your research in wolf dogs. And they wanted to work with a behaviorist that works with wolf dogs. And I said, gladly. And the most common misconception I would always get with them is, he's behaving this way because he's high content wolf. Or my wolf dog is 50% gray wolf, so he's doing this. And I had to explain to them, just so you know, this behavior that you think is wild behavior because you have a half content wolf dog is not actually wild behavior at all. It's because this wolf dog was pulled from its mother. So why was it pulled from its mother so early? And a lot of people said, oh, well, the breeder of the wolf dog insisted that when they're born, we have to take them from their mother at 3 weeks and bottle feed them so they can imprint on you. Because if you don't do that, the wolf dogs will never be develop a relationship with you because they're half wolf and they're wild. And I'd have to explain to them, that is hogwash. There's no research. That's like Hollywood, pulling puppies from their mother. Wolf dogs that are whelped by their mother, they'll behave and coexist with you just like a normal dog would. They have different characteristics, just like a bulldog has different characteristics than a German Shepherd. But the craziness that you're dealing with isn't because there's wolf in there. It's because that breeder pulled their wolf dog away from the mother because they thought that's what they were supposed to do. And all of these anomaly behaviors that you're blaming the wolf for is not the wolf, it's the breeder's fault. So my program had to change so much because I had to show people, well, since your wolf dog was pulled from its mother so early, has no sense of space, boundaries, or understanding of territory, they just run off because they have no understanding. my wolf dogs, when I walk with them, they don't run off. They orbit me like I'm a planet. They stay within my perimeter. They check back to make sure that I'm still with them. They don't behave like these wolf dogs that are pulled early. But but my wolf dog was pulled early because I got them from a breeder. And
30
so,
sec 30 seconds away from then.
yeah, so I had to basically create my curriculum to not just help undo what the owners have done to their puppies when they first arrived home, but I'm also following the guideline of the lessons that the mother was reinforcing, not teaching. The mother wasn't teaching, she was nurturing and reinforcing, and get their dogs back to that state so they can start enjoying their dogs again. So my curriculum doesn't change based on whether I'm dealing with a dog that was pulled from its mother early and bottle fed, and it doesn't change even if the mother did have the puppies up to 12 weeks and now you own this new puppy, because I find the commonalities in like, well, puppy was pulled early. That means that it's our responsibility to try to nurture these lessons. Or puppy didn't get pulled early, but you undid everything that the mother worked so hard to do. So in either case, it's just important that I just have that basic curriculum the way it is, because in either case, the owner learns more about their natural behavior and how they contributed to the unbalance or how the breeder contributed to the unbalance. They still go through the same course because the same lessons need to be learned by the owner to stop interfering with the upbringing that happens when you're raising a dog. You know, I thought that was very interesting though what you were sharing about the King Charles Cavaliers and how the mother was refusing those three puppies. And
No,
of course,
two.
art,
She wanted three, but two she refused to. Two.
yeah. But the fact that as they developed, it
Mm.
became clear
Why?
why. Yeah, and Mother Nature has those instincts that are part of the evolutionary psychology. Like I remember, um, just even humans, even though we think we have control of everything, right? I remember that with one of my boys' mother, I have two older sons. I went to the hospital, her prenatal care, and they were asking her questions. And when I was reading these questions they were asking her, I was so thrown off by these questions. Some of the questions was, do you like to taste? Are you eating scabs? Do you eat your own scabs? Or do you find the smell of fecal or poop enticing? Do you ever feel the urge to want to eat poop?
Oh my God, I'll vomit. I can't stand it. I'm sorry. What? It's kind of like I have like very imaginary mind. Like I can't listen to these things. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't look that up, by the way.
Oh my
There's,
God.
there's, but I asked the doctor, I said, hey, I'm like, I've never seen these questions on a doctor form before. Are there pregnant women that want to eat poop? And she said that the human body will know where the source of certain proteins can come from or calcium can come from. And so she says that the human body will desire certain foods or certain odd items that the body knows that the human can't comprehend. Why am I craving only yogurt? Why am I craving only bananas? The body knows what it needs, and you just got to follow suit. You can't help yourself. With my ex, when she had my son, I'm a carnivore. I love meat. And for whatever reason, for pretty much the whole 9 months well, actually not the full 9 months, but towards the middle, we finally got resolved. She could not stand me cooking meat. It didn't matter if I was cooking a burger, if I was cooking a steak, if I was cooking bacon. She would just run to the bathroom and vomit and beg me to stop cooking.
Mm.
Body just rejected the smell of meat. Um, and I couldn't even eat a burger in front of her. It would gross her out. It would cause little arguments between us. But evolutionary psychology is evolutionary psychology. You have to, and it's not that you have to, you need to let your body do what it needs to do, especially when evolutionary psychology is in play. And breeders need to respect that as well. Um, the more you interfere, the worse you make things. I was sharing a video of a mother demanding personal space from her puppies with a breeder to kind of demonstrate how this lesson is important for personal space. And that breeder and I disagreed, and she never really hired me. I'm sure she's gonna, I heard she retired because her puppies were having issues and she just got out of the breeding game. I think people sometimes, breeders, when they keep track of their puppies, they find out that their puppies are developing a certain way and they don't want to start their breeding program all over again, or they're not understanding what's causing it. So they just stop breeding, or sometimes they switch to a different breed. But this particular breed,
Would you lose a mommy language to communicate the need for the private space?
would I what?
Would you use a mommy language, like a doggy mommy language, to communicate the need for the private space, or how you gonna communicate need for the private space to the puppy?
Puppies generally will know it by just how you're behaving assertively. I mean, I usually just say get back. And if the puppy's not responding, I'll say get back. And if the puppy isn't responding to that, then generally what I'll do is I'll take the puppy and I'll put the puppy in an area where I'll leave them, and then I'll bring them back and do the cycle until they realize to stop approaching me, because the pattern
like a time
similar to
like
time. Yeah, similar to
time
time.
out.
Yeah, yeah. And then the puppy realizes, hey, I want to be in your space, but every time I could be in your space, but not be in your face. So the puppy will generally realize, I want to be in your space, and you can be in my space, just don't be in my face. And so because they don't want to be non-inclusive, they start to form their own self-control so they can be in your space and not have to be in your space. But this one breeder, she saw a mother dog showing that personal space, and her response was, I would never breed that kind of a dog. And I went, what do you mean? That mother's aggressive. I would never breed an aggressive female. And I said, that mother's not being an aggressive female, she's just getting the puppies off her teeth.
Yeah, there is a difference in between dominant and aggressive, a huge difference.
And she didn't understand that that's a very important lesson. It wasn't that the mother was being aggressive and you shouldn't breed her. The mother was going through raising her puppies, and personal space is very important, even with people. You know, if I were to come in to meet you in Vedran and I picked up Vedran over my shoulder and spun him around and gave him a hug and a kiss, Vedran would be like, hey, I know we know you from the podcast, Tony, but that was a bit personal. Get out of my bubble. Right? Personal.
No, he wouldn't. He's like easygoing.
Oh, all right. Well, when I see Vedran,
yeah. Yeah. I think like there is a lot of time misunderstanding of the term like a dominant and aggressive. Like my teacher was, one of my mentors was very specific, like dominance, usually the play of the dominance end up without injury, and injury is no intention of making injure the other side. So the dominance is like kind of like a play or interaction in between two specimens of two individuals without intention to hurt. Aggression is literally intention to hurt. So once, so if the dog interact without any injury, it's a dominant, how you say, play of the power play, the dominant play, right? And that's exactly what the mom gonna do to kids. She never intend to hurt them. It just to put the boundaries and put that, and sometimes requires, you know, pulling up the teeth and pushing them away. Aggression is actually completely the opposite. Aggression is actually intention to harm, and it always comes with a harmful outcome. If the skin is hurt on any level, we are talking aggression, and if it's not, we are just talking dominance. It's kind of like communicating the boundaries.
A lot of people don't understand that a lot of the times the scuffling that happens between dogs, or the aggression that happens between dogs, is this misunderstanding of personal space. Because a lot of times owners perpetuate it without knowing about it. But there was this one woman once in the past that she said that her puppy, not her puppy, her Shih Tzu was confusing her. He likes dogs, but he doesn't like dogs. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, I know he's uncomfortable around dogs, but sometimes he'll initiate the play. He'll say, oh, I want to play, I want to play. And I'll be so happy, go, oh my gosh, he doesn't really like dogs. I'm so glad that he's inviting your dog to play. And then after they play, all of a sudden her Shih Tzu will go, and then go after the dog. And then she goes, why is my dog bipolar? He just started the play and then he attacked the dog. And I had to explain to her, it's about being comfortable in a situation and understanding how to control personal space and whether the other dog's receptive. The only thing that made sense for her was this analogy where I said, when my daughter goes on a date and she is willing to listen to the advice of her father, the first advice I would tell her is, you probably like this guy a lot. And if you really like this guy and you want him to kiss you and he kisses you, you should absolutely enjoy that experience. I just want to give you a guy tip that I've learned from trial and error that will help you form proper boundaries and a fulfilling relationship. And she said, sure, what's going to be the tip? And this is what I would tell her. If the guy's kissing you and you're enjoying it, just try one thing. Put your hand on his chest and just push him off and say, I really like how you kiss, but let's move on with our date and let's revisit this later. That is personal space. The reason I want you to practice that personal space is I want you to count how many times he tries to reinitiate the kiss. If you have to go over and over, slow down, slow down, slow down. You are not safe with that guy. Because any guy will respect the personal space and not continue to invade until you're ready to invite him in for another kiss. I said, that's kind of like the Shih Tzu. The Shih Tzu is, I really like this dog. I want to interact. But it's a little Shih Tzu, and that's a German Shepherd. And that little Shih Tzu needs to know, if this gets out of hand, can I control my personal space, and will this German Shepherd be receptive? So I'm going to test it out. If that German Shepherd bounces back and leaves me alone, your Shih Tzu will probably reinitiate another play session because your Shih Tzu now understands he's receptive. So you're looking at a bipolar dog. I'm looking at a Shih Tzu just wondering whether they're safe to continue this play session. If this German Shepherd gets out of hand, will you respect my space? And once I explained it to her, then it made sense. But a lot of owners are oblivious to how canines control and manage that personal space. They understand it in a human perspective. Like, you wouldn't let your child just run up to a stranger's dog and go, Mom, there's a dog. Every owner, every parent grabs their child and pulls them back and goes, no, Billy, you need to respect their personal space and you need to ask the owner, is your dog friendly? Can I pet him? And if they say yes, you can pet. But when it comes to the dogs, that doesn't exist. They just let the dogs invade personal space whenever they want to. Well, so,
okay. I guess like it was a nice chat, or actually enjoying your presentation of your method of what you do in a first month or whatever time when you start dealing with the puppies. And interestingly, how the foundation of your actions are based on the fundamental same interpretation of the needs of the dog, yet completely different protocols that are actually arising from the same understanding of the needs for the dogs. My protocols or rituals that I practice are based on everything you said the same. So the foundation of why I incorporate these rituals into human-dog relationship with an expected outcome, because the humans behave in a certain way, and then by providing that environment, they force the dog to react on how the person behave, and then what we get from dogs is actually desirable and acceptable behavior. But the humans need to lay the foundation for that. And interestingly, for me, listening to your rationales behind why you are doing things are the completely same as I do understand dogs. But the way I'm interpreting them and putting them into rituals is almost fundamentally different, especially the feeding ritual. There is a ritual, there is a beginning, middle, and the end, like a initiation and then culmination and then end. So entire circle, there is a beginning and ending point, and maybe it would be interesting maybe for me to share it next time, and then we can maybe discuss the differences or the similarities.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I've really actually even really shared with you how I really start dogs off, because we're just trying to get to know each other better and really, like I said, when we first met, I could vibe with you very well, and I understood the premise of how you believe how the dog trading industry really hurts a lot of dogs, and I agree with you 100%. We just haven't got a chance to really share our approach exactly. To see what we have in common and what we can learn from one another as well. I just decided, especially after that tragic event that we went through here in North Carolina, I just wanted to just get on the podcast with you and just really share a lot more of, just open up and just be less guarded and just say, hey, this is exactly what I do and this is why I'm doing it. And just and get a little sense of normalcy. The last thing I want to do is talk about Hurricane Helene right now, because people are still suffering. But I'm really excited to be on the podcast with you, and really excited just to share with you and other listeners why I started doing this and kind of where I start off from. But next podcast, I'd love to hear what actually are the commonalities that we have. And then what are a little bit of, because I think we're going to have a lot of commonalities, but like you said before, just different pathways of how we got to the same conclusions. And maybe we do a lot of the similar things, but you have a different reasoning of how you explain why we're doing it this way. And I'm doing maybe similar things, but I have a different reasoning of how I came to that conclusion. Yet there's both, similar in their own direction.
No, it's interesting for me to see, like, how do you, for example, my walking ritual goes always after the feeding ritual, but I do understand your reason and your rationale in between this, even though I ended up being a stupid client, because while you're talking about that, I was thinking like, how the heck I go do this if he wants me to put the dog on a
smarter than the dog, so there's a way to do it.
Yeah, but I consider myself stupid client because I didn't come up with that myself. But then again, I was thinking about, if I would put the dog in another room, wouldn't that be a first thing I do after I come to the walk? And then will I punish the dog in some sense because I was trying immediately, usually my problem solving, and when I get into the debate, I'm trying to predict the worst situation. It would very easy for that, what you said, it would be very easy for the household of 3 people, or even with 2 people. Even if I would have like a roommate or cleaning mate or someone to happen be in that house for the first week. But how I gonna? And then I'm looking to solve when I try to present any problem. I'm trying to solve it for the stupidest person and for the most complicated situation. And if I can right? Because I kind of like feel responsible for every single dog that ends up in shelter, for every single dog that gets euthanized. Industry is responsible for that. We didn't try hard enough. We are not approachable to the people that need help. I see in this area where we live now, it's kind of like we are serving the lower, kind of like a lot of low income community that are actually completely ignored by entire industry, because they just happen to have not money to pay the services. And I also, the little dog ended up being, sick. She jumped from the dog, whatever happened to her. So she ended up having a inguinal hernia. Her operation costed a couple of thousands of dollars. And I just came to the vet tech that was actually doing the sales pitch. the vet is coming in and telling what need to be done, and then she excuses herself, and then here the vet tech come with a sales pitch. Okay, this is how much it's gonna cost. This is how much is this, and blah blah blah. And this is how you can pay. Everything need to be paid now. And if you can't afford, and this is the way you can pay it. And I said, like, what if I wouldn't be able to afford? And you know what she said? Then the only option would be humanely to euthanize an animal so it doesn't suffer. Only because I don't have money to do that. So I think like and it's not kind of a bragging about this capitalism way of how the insurance and the corporations are connected and how all of this health system is working only in the benefit of the ones can afford, and yet somehow entire other system is combined, like for example with this McDonald's food that I'm really craving tonight. I just want to have one, but I need to look at my blood pressure tomorrow. It's kind of like always pros and cons. So we have this system created around ill people and need for the. I was thinking like, what would happen to me if I really need the surgery and I don't have a good insurance, or I don't have insurance at all?
Yeah.
How would I end up getting a service? I just don't know. And
I think it's interesting. I mean, I really commend vet offices or professionals that have some sort of a payment plan. Even if you go to a hospital, like a human hospital, they're going to do surgery on you to save your life. They always collect the insurance information after, and maybe find out later you don't have insurance. But they always set up some sort of a payment plan. What can you afford? I know
that the veteran needed an ER, but he got like some flu, whatever was bad flu. He was in for half an hour. He got his prescriptions and he was seen by ER doctor. And his bill that he got caught like 3 months later or 2 months later, when he got a bill of $5,500.
Yeah. But even if you don't have insurance, even hospitals, like I'm not even talking about the vet hospitals, but even hospitals for regular people, if you get a bill for $5,500, they all understand that if you don't have insurance, they just want to work with you. What could you do? And if you said,
I'm just questioning like what cost $5,500 for the one pill and one injection? What is $5,000 in that? Yeah. That's the whole point of the question. And now we end up, I don't want to go to the rabbit hole. Thanks God I caught up on this fast, like a last second of our podcast, so we can finish this.
Going into the health industry, and I gotta get going soon.
Yeah. Of course you need to go. Now when the hot topic is up, now you need to leave. Okay, I do understand.
One of the things that I did want to say though, that I don't find clients are stupid. I think what happens though is when you're in a crisis situation or you're not comfortable with your situation, you tend to overcomplicate things. And sometimes there's simple solutions that you just don't see because you're too directly involved in the crisis situation. And, I have this situation where I had a client says, I'm single. How am I supposed to sneak the food bowl in there when I go for a walk? And she was driving to a different location to walk her dog. And I thought, well, what happens if you leave your dog in there for like 5 minutes in the car alone? Oh, nothing. Then why don't you just take your dog to the car, run back in the house, set up that situation, and then go drive and then do your thing. It'll already be done when you get back. And a lot of times the clients go, oh, I didn't even think about that. It's a super simple solution, but sometimes when you're the one in the emotional crisis, you don't see those simple solutions. But I even had, the whole week that I just explained to you is not even really complicated. I try to keep it very simple. But even still then, I get clients that will call me up after a week and I'll say, did you video your homework? How did you do? And the worst answer that I get from them is, oh, I wasn't able to do it. And then I'll say, all I asked you to do was feed and walk your dog. That was it. That was your homework. That's all that I just explained during this hour, how to feed and walk your dog. So how was it possible that you didn't do your homework for a week? You never fed and walked your dog?
You want to know the answer?
Huh.
Emotional entanglement.
Yeah. Yeah.
They did have a dog, but it was something much more emotionally that hit them than a dog. And that's where actually they finally, because that relief when you get a dog and those first couple of days is so big, like internally, that you don't want to do all of these structures and restrictions and all of those things that actually looks like is, but actually open the door for amazing lifestyle, long lasting enjoy of togetherness. Okay,
Yeah.
go walk your dogs and then see you next week. And then
Yeah.
really,
Thank you so
I
much for
really look
share
forward.
a bit of my program with you. I really appreciate how open you were to listening, and I'm really excited to hear more about what you do as well. So
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear and then compare the two. Okay,
yeah.
great, perfect. Thank you, everyone, tuning in. Finally, we got Tony back
Yep. I'm
in one
safe. I'm
piece.
alive.
And see you the next week, next Wednesday, again, same time, whatever time was today. I just don't know what that was again. Like Sunday,
7:30, but we always get
Wednesday,
on.
Wednesday,
If you're watching this, just log on by 8. We'll be on by then usually.
Eastern time. Yes. Okay.